Washington is already consumed by speculation about the implications of the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But let's not let the fixation on what comes next overshadow the remarkable record of what Justice Ginsburg accomplished in life. Erin Moriarty has our remembrance.
There was a senator who announced with great glee that I was going to be dead within 6 months. That senator, whose name I've forgotten, is now himself dead.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg lived a life defying expectations.
After careful reflection, I am proud to nominate for Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the United States.
She was nominated in 1993 to the highest court by President Bill Clinton, a Democrat.
My approach, I believe, is neither liberal nor conservative.
And approved by a bipartisan Senate.
When I was appointed, the vote was 96-3, and I was known as a flaming feminist.
During her tenure, she led the court in landmark decisions that expanded the rights of women. And even as the court grew more conservative, and she herself battled cancer 4 times, she continued to make her point in often cutting dissents.
The court does not comprehend or is indifferent to the insidious way in which women can be victims of pay discrimination.
People really responded to the idea of this tiny, determined jurist who was standing up for the principles of equal rights, voting rights, reproductive rights, and that just exploded on the internet.
Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Filmmakers Betsy West and Julie Cohen directed the 2018 documentary, RBG.
Ruth knew what she was doing in laying the foundation.
To put women on exactly the same plane as men.
And I think there's a certain authenticity to her. She's an unlikely rock star, let's face it.
Do you mind signing this copy?
I am 84 years old, and everyone wants to take a picture with me. Just standing up straight.
Yep.
At just 5 feet 1 inch tall, it was her seemingly superhuman ability to survive that made her a cultural icon and perhaps the most recognized justice in the court's history.
Yeah, you know me, notorious RB to the G. No.
The moniker, the Notorious RBG, a nod to the late rapper Notorious B.I.G., took off on social media, and indeed, notoriety followed.
People say, isn't this a weird connection between you and the rapper, the Notorious B.I.G.? And she's like, why would that be surprising? We have a lot in common.
We have a lot in common. We were both born and bred in Brooklyn, New York.
Which always gets cheers when she says it.
Born Joan Ruth Bader in Flatbush, Brooklyn, her father Nathan had emigrated from Odessa. Her mom Celia died of cancer the day before Ruth's high school graduation.
She said 2 things: be a lady, be independent.
Ginsburg spoke with Jane Pauley in 2016.
Be a lady meant don't give way to emotions that sap your energy, like anger. Take a deep breath and speak calmly.
Ruth was inspired both by her mother's words and her life story.
Her mother was the brains in the family, but her parents wanted her to go out and work even before finishing high school because there was a boy in the family and money had to be made so that he could go to college.
Jane Ginsburg is the justice's daughter, Clara Spira, her granddaughter. And how do you think that affected your mom?
Seeing a less qualified male preferred to a deserving woman was something that marked her from a very early age.
Ruth Bader excelled as an undergrad at Cornell University, but in an era when even the brightest women were encouraged to pursue an MRS degree, Ruth wanted more, and that drive was what attracted a fellow student and future husband, Marty Ginsburg. He died of cancer in 2010.
This is typical Marty.
Why do you say it's typical Marty?
Because he's relaxed, he's reading a good book, he is underdressed.
Their early relationship is featured in the movie On the Basis of Sex.
Which one makes me look more like a Harvard man?
He was the biggest supporter. My mother always said at Cornell, he was the only boy who cared that she had a brain.
She married Marty in 1954, had Jane in 1955, and enrolled at Harvard Law School the following year. When her husband graduated Harvard Law in 1958 and took a job with a firm in New York, Ruth transferred to Columbia Law School, where she graduated first in her class and still found herself unable to get a job.
I had 3 strikes against me. 1, I was Jewish. 2, I was a woman. But the killer was I was the mother of a 4-year-old child.
She simply was virtually unemployable.
Stacey Hawkins teaches constitutional law at Rutgers Law School.
Law firms were barely willing to give any woman an opportunity, and they simply were unwilling to give one to a working woman with a child.
A lot of people would be discouraged by that and would just not push ahead.
I think that that's what has propelled her. She has this quiet, steady, yet deeply deliberate way about her that she pursues everything and that she knows exactly how she's going to achieve her goals.
Ruth became a law professor at Rutgers, paving the way for women like Hawkins. And it was here that Ginsburg found her lifelong passion, working towards women's rights. It began after a few students asked for a class on women and the law.
She realized that there wasn't much in the way of women in the law. In fact, that the law was very unfriendly to women, and it really did inspire her own interest advocating for women's rights.
In the 1970s, she founded the ACLU's Women's Rights Project and went before the Supreme Court to argue 6 gender discrimination cases.
A person's sex bears no necessary relationship to ability.
She won 5 of them.
It was difficult, even into the middle 70s, to persuade judges who at that time were overwhelmingly male and white, to persuade them that there was such a thing as discrimination against women, because their idea was women are on a pedestal. Women are protected by the law. And many women were finding out that these so-called protections were protecting men's jobs from women's competition. This one is when I announced a majority opinion.
And later on the Supreme Court herself, where she stood out with her distinctive feminine collars, Justice Ginsburg was a liberal voice for constitutional protections. In 2013's Shelby County versus Holder, which watered down voters' rights, she wrote the dissent.
Race-based voting discrimination still exists.
She thought that this case was just extraordinarily wrongly decided, and she said that the reason why Alabama and other southern states had not been able to engage in the kind of voter tactics that would intimidate and disenfranchise black voters is precisely because they were prevented from doing so.
This court's decision is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you are not getting wet.
People understood that analogy because it was just something that everyone could relate to. It was like a rap lyric.
Music was a constant in the justice's life, beginning early on in Brooklyn when her aunt took her to the opera.
I was blown away by it, by the glorious music and the drama.
Opera became a passion that she famously enjoyed with a fellow enthusiast, the late conservative Justice Antonin Scalia.
We are different.
In 2015, the duo inspired a comic opera based on their unlikely friendship.
That is the closing number. The title is We Are Different, We Are One. Different in the way we approach legal text, but one in our reverence for the Constitution and for this court as an institution.
In life, Ruth Bader Ginsburg worked to expand the rights of the Constitution to everyone, says lawyer Clara Spira.
We call her Justice Ginsburg. What do you call her?
I call her Bubby.
And she says her grandmother may not be done yet.
I think that after Hollywood movies are done, after the Twitter memes are done, people will still remember her. We will still be reading her opinions in law school. And I do wonder if 10, 20 years from now, we will look to her dissents in cases like Shelby County and see that the things that she predicted that would happen to our democracy did in fact happen, that her dissents, while they are dissents now, may ultimately become majority popular and political opinion.